you see her now?
Woo! Yep.
I don't see it yet. I see this Thursday. I'm not seeing it, but it may take just a minute for it to pop in.
There, now it's live.
Now it's live.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking. I may not be able to do it. That's weird that it's not popping up.
Well,
now can you see it on your phone separately?
I can't see it on my phone, but that's all right. That's okay. I got you here. I'll just keep holding it open.
I'm gonna grab my phone and see if I can see it.
because I know that there's a comment section you can open. It says you don't have any viewers yet.
Yeah, it's not. Oh. I see the live button, but I'm not seeing anything yet. Usually it just it'll.
Hey, and you can always use this too because
But
that's
it's
a stylus on
different
the end.
every time. I'm gonna tell you guys. Every time I do it, it's different.
I don't know about you, but sometimes my fingers kind of F everything up. So I have to go back just
Well,
to
this
the
won't go
stylus.
down. Oh, just swipe it down. It says it's live.
Oh, it does say it's fine.
What time did you say you were going on?
Well, it's 8 here, but 7 y'all.
So we're not quite there.
5 till. Well, maybe that's why.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe Brooklyn has to enable it or something.
Well, I'm just gonna ask Brooke, are you there?
I love your That is like the bomb. Cat. I love your tiara.
My tiara?
Yeah. that
A
is
little
like the
tiara.
bomb, yes.
Brooklyn is watching. Ah, yeah, there she is. We're figuring it out. Look who's over my shoulder.
I gotcha! I'm on! I see you! Look at this! This is so cool! Here you are!
And there's
There's
Kathy
Kathy.
Murphy.
No, she's not watching.
Too
This
funny.
is the wildest night ever. Okay.
It's crazy.
How cool is this?
Yeah.
Live from Main Street Reads in Somerville, South Carolina. It's Kathleen Hall Varn. Woo!
Oh, with our
Oh yeah.
Breathless and Bubbles Brut Rosé.
That's awesome.
And she gives you this really cute, you know how when you do champagne, it doesn't really take the cork.
Mhm.
So she gives you this little,
Doohickey.
yeah, this little doohickey that you can,
Oh, fun.
and then it's got the little Breathless and Bubbles logo on the top of it.
Oh, that's fun.
It comes in a little bag.
So cool.
So cute.
They do everything so nicely.
They were nice. They were really fun to deal with.
It's also very good if you make a spritzer out of it too,
Yeah, that's probably what.
or with as a mimosa. Hey, Jonathan Hode's here.
Oh my goodness! I want to know what tennis shoes he's got on.
Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie. I want to know what.
Brookie.
Jonathan, what shoes are you wearing? which tennis shoes? Oh, Stephanie, my husband would love to have you and your husband for dinner. So we'll wait on a few more. And
I love his shoes.
I love his shoes.
I got some Kill a Mockingbird high top.
He was attending a Mary Kate reception, and she went to the wrong place the night that she was supposed to be at the library, and I did not know who he was, and but the thing that I really had to ask him was, about his shoes, and then it was John, and I saw him look, and I went, oh, that's Jonathan from Pat Conroy.
It says he got a new pair today.
Well, there you go. It's funny, on the way here, in my book, because we were military, we always had the Mayflower moving van come and pack everything up and move us. And I don't think I've seen a Mayflower moving van in ages. I mean, probably decades. And I'm driving up here, and what's right in front of me? A Mayflower moving van.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really cool. And then something else that I did the book, and I said, oh, it must be meant to be. Tonight's the night. So, and Michelle Rock's from Georgia. All right. There's my dad's cap. And my
tennis shoes. I don't have them on, but they're California.
Oh, those are awesome.
oh, cute.
Yeah, I don't know who makes these. They're not Converse, but they are pretty cool.
They are cool. Guess I'll have to show my.
Why?
Talking about shoes, might as well show what I got.
Dance goes.
What?
Her dance goes.
Peace signs. So, all right, Sherry.
All right, so Kat, tell us about your book.
Well, I guess we're featuring the one that Kathy Murphy picked for bonus book in November, Gardenia Duty, which Sherry Stock, my friend and the owner of this bookstore, helped me with the editing and challenged me with the ideas and helps me put the chapters in order. But it's basically inspired by my experience growing up military during the Cold Wars and Vietnam and the hippie movement, which I wasn't part of. I was part of the Jesus movement. And so it's kind of what it was like from the eyes of Little Women currently. That's what Sherry challenged me while I was writing Amira Unveiled. She said, have you ever thought of writing a modern tale of Little Women, telling what it was like growing up military? And she wouldn't let me get away with it. So I started researching and talking to vets and went through my father's service file and went to childhood experiences and, you know, telling the story of what it's like to grow up without a permanent community. You know, it's like you don't get to grow up from kindergarten to high school. You're constantly having to learn to make new friends. You're constantly the new kid. It's challenging. But the beauty of my story is that my real father was in the Navy as well. But my mom and him divorced when I think when I was in 4th grade or 5th grade. And my stepdad, who was a confirmed bachelor, met my mom, but didn't know she had 4 girls already in tow. And I based it basically on their courtship and how my stepdad just stepped right into the role as our father for the rest of our lives. And what makes us who we are? Is it nature versus nurture? Is it birth order? Is it, you know, it kind of explores how I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's all of the above. And Sherry has described it as, and I can't compare myself to Pat Conroy by any means, but it is sort of based on a military tale. And she called it the Gentle Santini because my stepfather was such an amazing man. And a lot of his characteristics in my character are really based on my experience with my stepdad. So.
Tell us about the jacket,
Which jacket?
the Navy jacket.
Oh,
Finding the Navy jacket.
which jacket?
Your daddy's jacket.
Oh, my blue, but his blue, oh, yeah. Oh, my God. My dad's dress blue jacket, he was a command master chief, which is as high as you can go in the Navy on the enlisted side. And he's such a humble man, you would have never known he was. And I found out too late that it was, he was that big a deal. And, because I would have, you know, extorted it a lot sooner, but with privilege on the base. But he had a blue jacket, and the dress blues has a patch on the side, and it's got the crow, or the eagle, actually, and it's beautiful. It's one of the prettiest patches I've ever seen, and I have it hanging in where I write. And one day I was going, he died overnight. I didn't get to see him before he passed in his sleep, when I had gone by to visit him the day before he passed. And the next morning I got the call that he had passed in his sleep from a heart, what do you call it, congestive heart failure. And so one of our friends had a medium on her radio station, and she had asked me, in case she didn't have enough cues, she said, would you call in case I don't have anybody to call? And I said, sure. So my dad's jacket was hanging there, and I hadn't started actually writing yet, but I had, and I got discouraged, and I was going to dump it. I was just going to quit. I was getting very frustrated. And so I was waiting on the phone, and I rubbed the patch that had the eagle on it. And I said, Daddy, I said, I know you're in heaven. I know, I'm so sorry I didn't get to say I love you the next morning, because I was going back to check on him the next morning. And I said, I just wanted to tell you I love you. If, I hope this isn't hokey and not a real thing. And so the lady got me second, the medium, and she started to talk to me, and she quit, and she said, I can't, I keep seeing a bird. I keep seeing a bird. I keep seeing like an eagle, but she said, but it's not the bird. It's like an emblem. And I had just touched that patch and had asked my dad to confirm that he was communicating with me. And then he told me to tell he said, I want you to tell the story. And she didn't know I was an author. She didn't know anything. So that really inspired me to keep going. And it was, every time I look at that jacket, I mean, it's special, because he was a very, very special man. And he loved being a family man. So.
Can you address a little bit of the theme of birth order in the book?
Well, I'm one of 4 sisters.
You might want to repeat the question. They might not hear.
Oh, okay. She's asking what I think the birth order, the basis of the birth order. And I actually did study birth order just out of curiosity, off and on, in my adult world, just because I wanted to know how to raise my daughter, who was an only child basically, and wanted to make sure she didn't get too many of the only child traits. So I'm oldest in my family, and 11 months later is my sister, and then 12 months later is my other sister, and then a year and 2 months is my other sister. So we're all basically Irish twins. But we each, I'm the oldest, my second sister's the favorite, my third sister's typical middle child, and my baby sister is definitely the baby of the family. And it's really funny how that you can look at, there are traits that come with being the oldest, because you're expected to fill certain positions. And the favorite, she even trumped me on my first birthday, because I'm August 25th and she's July 25th, so I didn't even get my birthday first. So I was always doing without. So I thought it was neat to blend that into the girls getting together at the death of the father, and coming together, and in their, because of where they were in the family and what they experienced, that I wanted to reflect it on birth order. And a lot of people, say that they have the same situations in their family. So I thought that was interesting. And then nature versus nurture was, what did I get from my real dad? What I got from my stepdad. And I have to say that I wouldn't be the same person if I hadn't been raised predominantly by my stepdad, because he was so much fun when he was home. So, because he was on Tin Can Sailor. He was a Tin Can Sailor, which is a destroyer, and he was a hull tech, which made him a snipe. So that, there's all kinds of cool stuff that I got to tell, how the parents shielded the girls from a lot of worries of, adult lifing, so that they grew up a little bit more innocent. And there's not as much technology in the 60s, 70s time period, and then it jumps to present day when he passes, and they do have technology, but by then they're looking back into their lives as sisters with this man and their mom, and they're looking from the eyes of adult, because now they have adult situations, and they're interpreting how their parents negotiated their courtship without the girls being worried about the adult issues. So it's kind of fun to watch the girls look back at the same situation, but they see it differently because of their birth order. You know, the oldest was unhappy moving around, and the second one was like, oh, everybody loves me, and the third one was like, oh, I snuck away and went and played baseball with the boys, and the baby's kind of like, I'm special, I get the special paper because mommy, I'm the baby. And you know, so it's kind of fun to watch them negotiate life from adulthood, because they all have messes, and you know, and I don't make the characters pristine and perfect because it's not Hallmark. It's a real life story. It's based on, you know, my view of growing up this way.
Can you see your questions or no?
No.
Because I'm going to get your questions up on my other screen here next to Miss Kathy.
I mean, I have my book.
Mine doesn't pop up on the
I've got my
phone.
book. And that's...
No, I mean anyone asking you questions.
Oh, I
yeah.
can see it if I look forward, but I can't. I keep putting my face up to it. I feel like the dog or the donkeys in Bon Air that came into our car.
All right, does Kathy have any questions? I turned the sound on for a minute. Yeah, me too. I gotta turn my sound off. You might have to type in the questions.
Well,
Imperfect science.
so one of the fun things that Sherry and I got to deal with was my cover, because I knew that this was how I wanted my cover as far as the picture, because it's the 4 little girls watching a destroyer going out to sea, or you can think it's coming back. It's your decision once you read the book, because it's both. And I told them they would not find what I had in my head. I had an old photo that a friend of mine gave me, and it was a woman that had the Jackie O style dress, which was how we would have had to go to the pier back in the 60s. And then it had the 4 girls, which they had to wear dresses, because we had to wear dresses, and we weren't allowed to wear pants in Navy performing duties. And so we started trying to get this cover illustrated. Everything else was right, but the pictures were wrong. I mean, they were giving me steamships and girls in shorts, and I had the picture. I told them just take the little boy out sketching 4 little graduated girls, and so it took us a while to get it, and then I put inside, there's actual photographs, like that's my real sisters when I was in 6th grade, after my mom had married my stepdad. And so I kind of speckled it with a few old vintage looking photos. So you know, and then my stepdad's destroyer did pick up the Gemini astronauts in the Pacific when they had to abort their mission back in '63, I think. And one of his shipmates that I tracked down actually sent me the photos that they took from the deck of the ship. So that was a pretty cool. Thank you for the cover. I like the cover too. Sherry's very, very proud that we accomplished it. And I originally called the book, you know, when you always kind of call your book something while you're writing, and I initially called it In Her Father's Jacket, because, you know, we were always standing in our father's shoes when he was at sea, keeping the family together. And then when we started really getting down to the brass, you know, tacks, we knew gardenia was the nature of the flower of the gardenias have got a really cool history. I did a blog on it on my website. And duty is what we were doing with our fathers as well. So we thought that the gardenia would have that really pretty feminine envelopment of the girls, but the duty aspect that was required of them was what they learned as well, being in the family. So it's kind of like a Little Women tale. So
Sherry, this one's frozen up again, dear.
Sherry.
This one's frozen up again.
Frozen up how?
Because you said for her to see
It
the
shouldn't be
comments.
the Zoom.
Oh, okay.
I mean, she can see the,
Does-
the Zoom froze?
Yeah, everything froze.
So if
No, that's Facebook frozen.
Sherry,
That's all right. Carry on.
yes, it is definitely kind of a Steel Magnolias. That's how actually Sherry and I kind of started messing around with a flower, because we said, you know, it's kind of like Steel Magnolias. It's kind of like what was one of the other ones we compared it to, Sherry? American Quilt.
Yeah, how to make an American
How to make
quilt.
an American quilt.
The intergenerational.
Yeah, it's just, you know, older women teaching the younger women, older men, teaching the younger men, and of course I had to talk in male voice when I was telling my father's side of the story, and that was probably the most challenging issue for me, because he's a sailor, so he's got to talk like a sailor. He's from Alabama, so he's gonna, you know, and back then there were racial issues within the military. My dad's from Alabama, so it would have been assumed he may have a problem, but he didn't. When did I start writing the story? Whew. Well, Sherry put it in my head in 2012, while I was writing Amira, and after I did Amira and I released in 2013, I decided, you know, maybe I'll just kind of putz around with this, and I got my dad's box of military records out and started going through it, and I said, you know, I could probably do this would be cool. So I didn't start writing the actual story, but I started meeting old vets that were wearing their ball caps that had their ship, you know, what ships they were on, and I would ask them if I could talk to them, and I'd get their stories, and so I really didn't start writing it until about 13, 14, 15, maybe 2015. But I started blogging, and I was going to tin can sailor reunions with my real father, so I was meeting a lot of sailors that had been on tin cans, because they are all destroyer men. And they'd tell me their funny stories, and they'd tell me the tricks that they'd pull on each other. And then eventually, when I was trying to promote Amira, I went to Olive Garden, and I was sitting down. We don't have one near my house, so I was excited about, you know, bottomless salad and breadsticks. And so I was sitting there with a book reading it, and I was eating my salad at the end of the bar, and I guess lunch hour was over, and there was two old guys at the other end of the bar, and they apparently were really, really good friends, and they had worked in the shipyards, and Jack was actually the cook during the Korean War on a ship, and he had really good stories. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I heard this man with this big white fuzzy beard, looks like Santa, and they call him Santa. He goes, "Free drinks for all the blondes at the bar," or "free glass of wine for the blondes at the bar." And I was just sitting there. He goes, "Don't you want a free glass of wine?" And I looked up to see who he's talking to, and I'm the only one there. So I moved down with them, and they said that they meet every Thursday, and I was welcome to become part of the lunch bunch. So for 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe close to 3, I met with them, and Jack became one of my best friends. He was really, really nice, and he actually went on an Alaska cruise with us with his girlfriend. He was a widower, and they just told me great stories. I mean, they would tell, and it was just, so I named characters after them, and Jack had kidney failure because of his heart, and 2 years ago he took himself off dialysis because he was tired, and his daughter called me and said, you know, Dad wants you to come up and visit, because we knew he had been maybe a week. And so I met him on a Thursday at Olive Garden, and I went up on Thursday before he died. He died on Saturday, to his house, And we sat there all afternoon, and I read him the parts of the book that I named him after. And he just thought that was so amazing. And he bragged about it. And then they called me on Saturday and said he had just basically fallen asleep. So that was a real neat part of the book, was getting to know these old guys and what they went through, because they were under the laws of conscription. They didn't have the choice. They had to do 4 years or, you know, not qualify, but you had to do your 4 years. So both my dads were career military, but Jack was a kitty cruiser. He was one that went in when he was 17 after he graduated in Boston, and he went to where the Marines were and the Navy were, and one was on one floor of this building and one was on the other floor of the building, and him and his buddy wanted to be kitty cruisers, and they had to have their parents' consent, and they could do what they called the buddy system, so they could join together. And so they went to the elevator and they said, well, what's it going to be, the Marines or the Navy? So they got a coin out and they flipped it and it came up Navy. So that's why they joined the Navy. So, but he was in 4 years, but his stories were funny because he was a cook. So they called him, his nickname, cooks are called cookies. So the guys on the ship will call you Cookie. So, and he would tell me, you know, how the amphibious crew would come in late at night and after they had been diving, and they would smell the warm bread being baked at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they would beg him to give them some. And so it's just really neat to hear from their side of it. But I had to, you know, I had to work a little hard at talking like a male, you know, sailor, and I had to use a couple. I had to do a couple, you know, cuss words, because my real dad even told me some real stories about when you're in boot camp, and it was true. So I used it, but I don't do a lot because I'm agreeable with. I think if you're using curse words just for the pure shock value, or you think that's going to keep your reader in there, it turns me off. But he really did have to, you know, he really was, and he was a bachelor, so I mean, he did things that married men don't do. And he left many hearts in many ports. So it was fun to show that too. You travel from Charleston to Jack's Beach to Havre de Grace, Maryland, to the Philippines and Subic Bay. I mean, I really had to I had to put more research and writing in it. Let's put it that way, because it's historical, so it's got to be accurate, or somebody's gonna pick me apart. So, I did worry about my family reacting to this story, because a lot of the childhood memories were based on things my sisters and I did, and some of the stories about my stepdad are based on things that he did with my grandchildren. And but one of the things I put in the back, I don't know why we put the acknowledgement in the back, but I put I said, but as I pointed out in the story, behind all these men were wives and children, the ones who waited and kept the family together during the husband's absence. There has to be a thank you to my mother and my 3 sisters, because without the experience of being a real package deal, my story would lack a realistic flair. Because like I said, their lives, some of their lives are messier than others, and they're questioning, you know, why didn't they marry someone more like their stepdad, or, you know, why did I pick this one? And of course you could always go back and kind of see that it had to do with that birth order on what motivated them. And I did kind of flesh out who I wanted in my characters in my head, so I knew what I wanted to make my oldest daughter, and I knew what I was going to do with my second sister and the third. And the second sister I wanted to make a widow. So yeah, it is a good way to keep the family stories, because that's what I originally wrote A Mirror Unveiled for, was just to keep the memory of when I did pursue dance, being told I couldn't because I wasn't good enough, and it turned out it was just I didn't have muscle memory because we didn't have consistent exposure to it traveling at the Navy. I wound up joining a belly dance team troop, and we wound up teaching belly dance down in Jamaica, and I was just doing it because it was such a fun experience, and 85% of it's true because the troop said don't change anything, just tell the story, because they didn't care, because you couldn't make up some of the facts. Some of the facts would I trade being the oldest? I don't think so. I think the resilience that was achieved in it, it did make me a little more responsible for my sisters than I probably, because we were basically a year apart, because my real dad was enlisted, and he wanted to go back to college, and the Navy agreed to send him to college, so he was in Maryland going to the school you go to before you go to college, and they were going to make him an electrical engineer, and he was going to work with missiles and stuff like that. And he met my mom, and he, the old romantic that he was, said, hey, getting ready to go to college, but I'm going to go back in as an officer, and this is going to be my career choice, but if you think it's a good idea, maybe we can get married and you just come with me. So that's how my dad proposed to my mom, and she wanted to get out of the small town of Havre de Grace, so she did. And I guess the first year was me, and August 25th I was born, and then the next year, July 25th, my sister was born. And so I guess something happens every Christmas, and then the next year, August 15th, my other sister's born, so definitely something going on around Christmas. And my mom tells us this story about her skinny dress, that she could always get back in the skinny dress right back about the time of Christmas. So he told her she probably should burn the damn dress, but you know. But she didn't, and
Okay,
all
so
here.
we have to have a brief commercial interruption because we have a customer,
Uh-oh.
Cynthia, yay Cynthia,
Oh, hey.
that would like your book personalized to her.
Oh no.
So here's
Okay.
here's the spelling of her name. It's regular. You have a
Regular.
pen right there, my dear.
I think I have your tiara.
You think you have this one?
But I haven't earned it yet, so I need to write a few good books.
Well, this is
So the
Kathy
Pulpwood
Murphy.
Queens,
Yeah.
Kathy Murphy's on she's joining us via Zoom here. So the Pulpwood Queens is a national book club, and they pick a different book every month, and Kat's one of their picks, and they have chapters around the country. She has like 5,000 members worldwide. It's fantastic. So, and we do them every month here. So you can look on our website. You have a bookmarking, look on it. It'll show you the next events coming up. Come out and join us. It's tons of fun.
Oh, we have a
But
blast.
that's the only Pulpwood Queen requirement is you're supposed to wear a tiara.
Oh, well, I have a tiara.
There you go.
And
Perfect.
It's perfect.
Well, I
Thank
need
you
to
so
get
much.
one.
So one of the things I find when somebody asks you to sign the book, I'm always like, gosh, what am I going to say? I know in Mira Unveiled I said I could have missed the dance. I could have missed the pain, but I would have missed the dance. So that was my one that I did for Mira. So I kept thinking about what to do on this gardenia duty, and I said, you know what? I think it's simple. It's find your tribe and love them fiercely. Because growing up military, your tribe is your family, because you're not usually anywhere long. So I can tell you the sibling that I wouldn't want to be is the baby. I am glad I was not the baby. So Sherry, what? Yeah, I
I want
did.
to join in and listen.
Sold a book. It's probably. I think it might be the one that has my two mistakes that I didn't see for about 6 months. And when Amazon got it, everybody was getting this book with a disappearing P, and of all the words that it was missing in on the back was disappears. So I was like, that's kind of fun, but you know, no P and disappear. So it took me a while to get that section uncirculated, but now all the corrections have been made. So yeah, that was my. Did I discover any other stories like that? You know, my mom basically was a single mom most of the year when she was married to my father's, because both of them were surface. They were destroyer men. And a lot of times, my stepdad was stationed mostly in the Pacific Theater until they took him to Mayport, where he would eventually meet my mom. And one of the funny stories that's in it is that, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but is about how my stepdad was terrified of cats. And we talked about this his entire life. Why was he terrified of cats? And he couldn't put his finger on it. And so he endured my mom's love of cats. So we always had at least one cat. And she, and you know, it was funny that of all the things my dad was exposed to, like Vietnam and the wars and the Vietnamization of it, and getting ready to help turn the ships over to the South Vietnamese, is that a cat would just absolutely freak him out. So I incorporated that into the story, but the story, if you read the book, the story about the kittens is true. So
Who's your favorite character?
who's my favorite character?
Yeah.
Mallory. The
Why?
middle child?
Yeah.
Because she's hilarious. I mean, she's the one who's gonna go out and play with the boys, and she's the one that she never marries. She joins the service. I have her join the service, which is, again, it's that nature versus nurture. She joined because of nurturing, or was she born to go into the service because she was born by my dad, who had a service calling? So she was the one I could mix up the most, and I had the most fun mixing her story up. And you know, she was the one that could take a power tool and do anything with it, but yet she really is softer inside than she lets on. So but I did make my second character a widow because I wanted a widow perspective at a younger age, and I got a little concerned when unknowingly my second sister's husband did die early while I was writing the book, and I was thinking, oh, I bet I'm going to have to change that. And I thought, Sherry's always telling me, you can't worry about what family's going to think, really. You got to just tell it. And you know, I didn't make her a widow because he had died. I'd already created that character.
You have one of said there was a great story about the dress. Did you discover any other stories like that?
That was what I was saying about the kittens
Okay,
and
yes.
stuff like that. And my stepdad used to joke about when he was single in front of my mom. My husband and I used to go over and have Sunday dinner with him. He'd grill steaks on Sunday, and me and my husband Steve would go, and he would talk about how they were getting ready to pull out to sea, and he'd be sleeping over at some woman's house that had kids, and she'd say, hey honey, go get me some milk for the baby. And he says, I'd take that $2 and I'd run for the ship, and I'd be going up the gangplank, and I'd be going, Captain, hold it, Captain, hold it. So I mean, he always acted like he was bad, but he'd give you the shirt off his back. So
is any of your family mad at you like Pat's family always was?
is my family mad at me? Well, my dad talks to me. So,
What about your siblings?
well, my baby sister doesn't read, so she's just never read. In fact, I found her report cards in my dad's box that I was reading his materials, so I could know what his Navy record was, so I could figure out what the timelines were historically. And she had a fourth grade, third grade report card, the old kind that comes in the little the little envelopes, and you had to bring them home and have your parents sign them, and they made comments on what you could do or you not. And hey Gigi, miss you. She it said in there, we got to get her to read, and we've got to get her to pick better friends. So I knew she ain't gonna care. My middle sister, I don't know if she read it or not. My second sister that was, she's the one that isn't speaking to me for different reasons, but she supposedly thought the book was good, but my mom doesn't read either. So I'm sort of safe, but they keep getting feedback from other family members about it, and my third sister got mad because she said, yeah, it's a work of fiction, right? I'm going to write my work of fiction book too. And for some reason she was insulted that I used some of the childhood stories, and I don't know why, because I mean, it's typical. I mean, we did save pollywogs in the woods when it was dry enough, and lots of other people have done that as kids. And you know, we did go to Christmas to Havre de Grace, and Havre de Grace was my little small town that we got to run around in the 60s and 70s when we'd go back on vacations and visit my grandparents. And it was like American Graffiti. I mean, you just had to be back by dark. And so there's a lot of good stuff that, you know, I experienced that I could kind of preserve. I think I like that it's probably historically preserving that, not as techie age. You know, we couldn't just get on Zoom and talk to our dad. We had to wait till he came back, and sometimes they didn't even know where the ship was. And you know, my dad, they both were career, like I said. My real dad was in for 26 years, and my stepdad was 32.
I think that's my favorite part of the book is all of the, I'll get a little bit
Okay.
closer since I'm not,
Sherry's making a
I don't
comment.
have to write it in. But I think that's my favorite part of the book is all the nostalgia, because there's all those parts that you read that are, oh my goodness, that happened to me, and you know, all that stuff we did when we were kids, chasing,
The mosquito truck.
riding after the
mosquito
mosquito truck and catching fireflies and
Yeah.
walking down for ice cream and all those things that now, you know, they order things on Uber Eats and it's like it's a completely different world.
Yeah. It was, you know, it was fun because I love Havre de Grace, and now it's kind of a yuppie town, but you know, that was the most north I ever got, because we all basically were always in the south. And when my dads went to Vietnam, we actually were moved up there in case something happened to my stepdad that year he was there. And so my mom could have family support instead of being that single mom down in Jacksonville that had nobody to help her, because she wasn't one of these Navy wives that went to the different women's groups, and she was pretty solo. She just wasn't attracted to that aspect. So so it was fun that year, as far as we lived up there for a year. But then when my stepdad came back, he was stationed at Charleston, and this is where we finally got some stable community. I've been here since then, since 8th grade, so I've been here a while. I consider myself a Charlestonian. That's my community.
Where is Havre de Grace?
Havre de Grace? It's in Maryland. It's right above Baltimore. It's about 45 minutes above by Aberdeen, where the proving grounds are. That's the Bainbridge. It's right close to the Delaware border.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And what branch of service were you in, sir?
Army.
Army.
Okay.
Sure.
My daddy was in Navy. He was a radio man in the Navy, but all of us grew up too with that sense of duty, that sense of serving a cause greater than ourselves that I think that we miss out on a lot now.
Yes.
You know, that our kids, you know, and again, I made my kids like volunteer at the animal shelter and stuff, but in terms of like going into service,
Patriotism is.
they would have lost their scholarships if
Yeah.
they went into service. Whereas if things were,
No.
I mean, they funnel you now. If you're like college bound, then you could try and get naval, but then you can't. You know, my son couldn't turn down going to Duke and all that, so he couldn't. So they kind of discouraged that service above self that we had when we were growing. I mean, all of our dads and cousins and uncles.
Yeah, my father
served
was in the
something.
Navy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my grandfather.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that I was talking to Eldana. Is she the one that did Clover Blue? Is Eldana?
I don't know.
The author Clover Blue. I was enjoying her posts last couple of weeks ago, and she was talking to. We're about a year's difference, and of course we barely missed the flower child era. We kind of were too young to be part of it, but we're old enough to remember it, and I wanted to be a hippie so bad. You can see the way I'm dressed. Yeah.
Can I
She's
ask?
got her peace
I
sign.
got my peace sign on my back. I got my
She's
dad's
wearing patchouli.
dark. I wear patchouli. That's
Can I
my,
ask when you were?
what I was.
When you were born?
58.
62.
So I'll be
62.
I'll be 62
Right.
in a month.
Yeah.
Yep.
We just missed
So-
it too.
45.
The 60s hit Ohio in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly.
See, and I just-
outside Chicago.
And I was a late bloomer on top of that, so
Oh,
you know, I wasn't the guys weren't breaking down the door. I mean, I just, I was everybody's buddy.
Yeah.
And so I was part of the Jesus movement, and that was so that I that was the only excuse I could get to get out of the house and not be stuck with my sisters.
What is the
Was I'd get to go to church. So
Jesus
I was
movement,
the, I was
Youth
the,
groups and
I was the religious one. I even married the Pentecostal pastor's son, so, and had my children with him. And so that was my 70s, my late 60s and 70s. And one of the funny things that happened, it doesn't really have anything to do with this book, but when we were living in Haverty Grace, I was in 7th grade, and I was, and that was the age of miniskirts and sleeveless blouses, and my uncle went to a Pentecostal church, and he decided I needed to go to camp. And so I didn't realize that they don't wear anything sleeveless, and they don't wear anything above the knee. And I took all my shorts, and I had to go a whole week like that. And yet, it was, I was one of the ones that would actually say something intelligent in a group meeting that had something to do with the Bible. And one of the counselors pointed out, and Kathy, I know we talked about being horrified, and that was horrifying for me to have to walk around and be that girl, and because I didn't have any options, and that's the only clothes I had. And so he was saying, the one person that looks like they haven't been raised in a lifetime in this religion, and she's got very common, practical, spiritual sense. And so it was kind of a lesson in humility for me, but at the same time, it built me up that somebody recognized that what I said was actually it was validated by one of the counselors.
Despite what you
Talk
were
about
wearing.
the, after you look at your comments, talk about the title, Gardenia Duty, because I love that title,
That is an
especially the duty
interesting
part.
title.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gardenia is actually from Charleston, the one that the botanists developed back in the 1700s. And when my dad had a gardenia bush, which I actually wrote into the book as well, and it talks about, and he was a farmer, he definitely could grow a garden. And so I use his gift as a gardener, a talented gardener, as in symbolically with him as a father, and him taking on 4 girls that are biologically not his, and how he handled each one very skillfully and lovingly, and recognized the different traits of the different girls and didn't try to lump them all together. And so gardenias, I said, well, I'm going to use that bush that was in his backyard when we moved in our first and last house. And it was a scraggly little bush, and I said, wonder what gardenia, the totem of gardenia is. So I looked it up, and gardenias are symbolic for purity, fragrance. They're tough, they resist pestilence, there's a bunch of neat friendship, just a lot of, if you look up the totem gardenia, and you'll see why I picked gardenia. And then the gardenia bush in the book is a very relevant scene for the girls. And duty, of course, was because my father's, when they were gone, there was an expectation of how we had to be with our mom. And we were the ones that kept the family. My mom was the one that was required to keep the family glued together. And, snail mail didn't always get to my dad, and it didn't always get to my mom when it was supposed to. So,
And that's the thing that I think that, to me, was the most beautiful part of this book, because it's an homage to duty.
Yes.
To the
Yes.
duty that the parents had, the fathers had in the military, to the
Yep.
duty that the mothers had, keeping things
Right.
okay on the home front, to the duty of the kids that,
Right.
had to be left to their own devices and figure it out. And
Everyone has a duty.
yeah,
well,
exactly.
we
yeah.
pushed my mom a little harder when my dad first went to sea, and we got a little bit more obedient the closer he came back.
Daddy's coming home.
Daddy's coming home. Right till your father comes home. So, there's little things like that because you lived it, and so it makes the characters a little bit more fleshed out. They're not so flat. And like I said, I put flaws in all of them. Even the marriage. There's a flaw in the marriage because she's been a single mom a lot, and the last thing she knew if she married my stepdad was she's going back to it basically. But she was a stay-at-home mom, like typical of that era. And
Well, there's flaws.
there's
in every
always,
marriage
I told him, I
and
said,
every-
if somebody said, oh, I wish you'd put more of a Christian value in it, and I thought, well, that wasn't really the point. It was more moral compass, which we get through all religions. I mean, it doesn't, we should, and or just growing up with people with moral compasses, and somebody said, oh, there are a couple cuss words in there. Well, he's a sailor.
he's a sailor.
Just a couple? Just a couple.
I didn't do too many. I mean, like I said, if you overuse it, it kind of ruins and I all these Navy men that I talked to that I went to the Tin Can Sailor reunions with my real dad and talked to these guys for 2 or 3 days, and they told their stories, and but they never go too far because there was still that too much respect for me as a daughter
Right.
and a woman.
Yeah.
They would only tell me so much, and there was one guy that was really telling me some good stories, and his wife cut him off from me, so I only got a few. But then you can go on these websites, which I did, where these guys that were stationed in Olongapu over there in Philippines, and it was pretty. You went across the bridge. They called it the Shit River Bridge because it smelled so bad, and you knew which bar to go to. This is the Navy bar, this is the Marine bar, this is the country bar, and you would hear Johnny Cash coming out of this one, and you walk in, and it'd be a little Filipino with a guitar, and it really gave me some great colorful
Oh my gosh.
scenes because I was reading these guys' memories, and I
Yeah.
could take what I wanted. I mean, there was even a bar where the Marines went, and there was an alligator in the ditch, and you had to cross over to this ditch, and there would be somebody selling little ducklings, and they would bite the head off the ducklings and throw them to the alligator. I was like, oh
Lord.
my God.
Yeah.
So but you just had to kind of find the guys that were telling the stories, because they were telling
Yeah.
them to each other, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
public.
Yeah.
So
That's fun.
I got to sneak on. I was flying on the wall on their website.
Wow, that's so
So it was fun.
fascinating.
But the research is what really
Oh,
got me.
that must have been incredible.
Yeah, fact checking, and like I said, the Gemini 8 did actually get rescued by my dad's
So
destroyer.
where did you go to get all this information then that wasn't yours, your family's,
On the internet, reading books,
and finding these guys?
and my lunch bunch guys,
Wow.
and going to the reunions, and
That is fascinating.
but the problem with going on the internet is you go down a rabbit hole and you can go
Oh, yeah.
way down the rabbit hole and
yeah.
lose a lot of time.
So
Oh, yeah.
Jack was your best.
Jack was we were best friends. Jack was definitely one of my best friends. I mean, he was just, I'll tell you another little story about Jack. He's kind of funny. So Jack is a widower, and he's got a girlfriend. And so his late wife didn't want to go to Alaska. And everybody should see Alaska at least once in their life. It's absolutely pristine, stunning. So my husband had done it before. Another friend of ours was a travel agent and wanted us to do it again on the Norwegian line. So I was telling Jack we were going. He says, oh, I got points with Norwegian. Now he's 81. And and he's got a Boston accent, so everything he says is with a Boston accent, so sometimes we'd make fun of it, and that was a lot of fun too. And so he goes, well, you know, I got some points. I think I'll take me and his girlfriend. So he did. He signed up. And every day until we went on the cruise on a Thursday, he would say, I'm so mad. I told my girlfriend she's going to be on the top bunk. I'm going to be on the bottom bunk because my heart can't get up on the top bunk. So she's going to, but now they're telling me I'm going to have to rent a ladder. And he says, $10 a day for this ladder for her to get up on the top bunk. And I'm like, what? I've never even heard of a room other than the crew. And I'm thinking, boy, you're just really pinching pennies, Jack, you know.
Yeah.
And so he kept saying it. Well, we got on the ship. We all got there, and Jack and my husband kept missing each other for 2 days. Nobody really believed either one was on the ship. So finally, I went to the desk, and I couldn't remember his last name. I knew it began with a C, and so it's Connerty, because Chief Connerty is named after him. And so I finally went to the desk, and I said, you know, I know they're on the 8th floor, but I don't know the room. And so I talked the desk into figuring out on the roster who he was. I told him, I said, no, his girlfriend's first name. And finally got him, took about 5 minutes, found it. And they called the room, and they say yes. And they hand me the phone, and his girlfriend says, yeah, we're in room 8, whatever. And so I go down, yeah, come on down. And so I go down, knock on the door. She opens the door and says, oh, come on in. There's no bunk beds, there's no ladder, and the beds are pushed together. They're obviously... I looked at him and said, I can't wait to get back, and I'm going to tell them. There was no, I mean, he had it so hoodwinked. I mean, it was a really funny story. He says, what happens in Alaska stays in Alaska. It didn't. I had so much fun telling that to Santa when we got back. We ate lunch, that there was no ladder, and the beds were pushed together. So. Even at 80.
That's hilarious.
His heart was good enough for that.
His heart was good enough for cuddling, I guess. So. He's a sweetie. I really liked him. I miss him.
That's hilarious.
But he, like I said, I met him on a Thursday, and I read him his parts of the book on a Thursday, and he died on a Saturday. So it was very fortuitous that I don't know. I just believe if you look or you stay open, I say God will send you little messages like he did about my dad's jacket, or the Mayflower van coming here, that was cool. And in this case, you know, meeting Jack on a Thursday and spending one of his last days with him on Thursday. So
Do you still see Santa?
he died 2 years ago
Oh,
at Christmas.
Oh
well, that's
my.
kind of.
He had a Santa suit and car, getting ready to go spend time with his grandchildren. And he's actually born on my sister's birthday. So every time my sister's birthday comes, I always think of him.
August 15th?
No, July 25th.
Because my daughter's is August 15th.
Oh my God, this is weird. So
We already had this thing about all of our birthdays are all kind of like together.
I'm,
Oh,
Aug-
interesting.
I'm August 25th. She's 26th,
Sixth.
and Kathy Murphy's 27th.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I swear Kathy's just my other twin. We just got separated at birth or something. Except I don't weld.
So tell us I think we have time for one more question. Check your comments, but tell us what you're working on next.
Well, since I wrote this out of my dad's service box, with all the stuff from his desk and his, just everything that came off the ship was in a box that I had gotten out of his closet when he passed, and that's how I the bones of the book or around that helped me get the right form number or the right, you know, it just gave me the accuracy of how they do it. And I inherited from a client who used to work for RCA for the engineering department in the radio part. I inherited a box of letters that I had forgotten about that was in my garage when we had moved into our house, and they're love letters from her husband, and she was a spinster, so she moved to New York so that she wasn't the small town spinster. She wanted to be the party girl in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And she came from a Methodist background, and she worked for RCA. Well, RCA had the contract for the Holland America line, which was the steamship line that was berthed over in Hoboken before the piers got turned down. So I started reading his letters and putting them in order, and I mean, he's Dutch, and he was married to a woman that was 10 years older than him, and in '53, after the flood, the Holland flood, he tried to he kept, the marriage was a shambles, so finally he stayed at sea all the time with the steamship, and the marriage was basically over. And he had met my client for several years because he would have to go over to the RCA building to get parts for the radio room, and so he knew her before he ever started courting her. And I read these letters, and I mean, the love story in it is precious, and but it's during the time of the race for color TV, and I had to learn a lot about radio and what he did. And I actually there's a museum in Hoboken that has all kinds of history about Hoboken, and I even found that there was a mascot dog for the docks named Blackie. So, you know, all kinds of cool stories that I get to incorporate into their love story. And he did win her heart. He did very dignified, gave his wife, finally gave him the divorce. And they married, and they were happy for the rest of their lives. But they married when she was 48 and he was 51. But I read those letters, and I mean, he's definitely Dutch, because I don't know why he thinks calling her his big draft Belgian brown horse is romantic, but that's what he calls her.
He's pretty sure it's
But if you go back into the Dutch history, you kind of see what he's trying to say, but it doesn't really. So I was,
don't translate.
yeah.
That's
So we were
hilarious.
supposed to go to New York a few months ago, so I could go walk where her apartment is. I did get to Google it and go inside of it because it was listed with virtual. So I did go to the actual apartment they lived in and got to look around it. And but I was going to go walk there and where they used to meet in the park. And she used to stand in the skyscraper and wave at him when he would be going back out to sea.
Where did they live?
Morton Street,
Where?
up
East,
by
west side?
up by Gramercy.
Oh.
It's one of the
Gramercy Park?
up by that way.
Interesting.
So, and she worked on Broad Street.
Okay.
So RCA was scattered. I mean, it wasn't like in
Oh.
one building. It
Oh,
was,
yeah.
you know, so the engineering department, you could see the ship go by, and he actually saw her with a lampshade on her head one time when he was on the bridge with his binoculars.
That's
So
hilarious.
it's a fun. So I figured, you know, if I
Yeah.
did the service box, I'll do their love letter box,
Yeah.
and then I'll just have to find a third box to make a trilogy.
The box set.
The box set. That's right. So.
Wow, it's just really been a real treat listening to you speak.
Oh,
Thank you.
It was
think,
fortuitous you came by when you did.
yeah,
It is.
I really appreciate listening to you talk about your family
Oh,
and
thank you.
how their reactions to your writing.
My dad
Um,
likes it. My dad said it was nothing but a fantastic. My real father loved my stepdad and his presence in our life, and they were very non-competitive, and he just thought my stepdad was a wonderful person. So he said he saw nothing but a great tribute to, you know, what he knows is real in the book.
So I have a father who's he was a doctor, and I have a brother who's an attorney and very, very successful. And I would love to write my story, but I keep thinking I better keep my mouth shut until
That's not what she says. Sherry says.
Write his fiction,
Write it.
David. Write his
So the black dog actually was named Blackie. Came off of a Belgian barge, and one of the guys on the dock actually kind of mysteriously took it home for 2 days until the barge went back out. So Blackie became the mascot of the Hoboken dock workers. It's a really cool story. It's sad how she died, but they used to, you know, but it was cool.
Hoboken, New Jersey.
Hoboken. And I kept wondering why when I Googled I couldn't find the piers, and I found out they tore them down. So because they were, you know, so they're not there anymore.
Really? I
But you
didn't
can
know.
get old pictures. in that museum.
I'm gonna put the feedback on for
All
a
right.
minute here just
Well,
to say.
Thank you. Thank you so
Kathy.
much. This has been a real treat.
Fascinating.
Alright, you can speak now, Kathy. We'll just get some feedback for a minute.
Thank you.
You guys have a great evening. Thank you so much. Oh, careful, you forgot your mask there.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I don't know, we have a whole bunch of
You want me to turn mine off?
No, alright. Love you, Kathy. I'm gonna mute you again.
Oh man.
I wanted to hear her, but we're getting too much reverb.
Thank you, Gigi. Thank you, Karen, and whoever's still on. So
This
it was
great.
fun.
Thank
It was
you,
fun. I
Kat.
appreciate it.
It was great.
And don't forget your
Yeah, yeah. Drink up. Drink up.
So, thanks y'all.